This right here is the new Antigravity A1 drone. And in this video, we're gonna go through all of the features that are packed in this tiny 249 gram drone. I have a full production unit right here. And so I'm gonna be able to show you a more detailed view of how this drone operates, and we can really dig into all of the features that are packed into this tiny little drone. So if you're ready, let's get into it. So the Antigravity A1 is 249 grams with a standard battery. It's 291 grams with the high capacity battery. Now on the standard battery, you get 24 minutes of flight time, and on the high capacity battery, you get 39 minutes of flight time. Now the sensor on this camera is a 1 and 1.28 inch sensor. And for video resolution, you have 8K, 30 frames per second. And for photo resolution, you get 55 megapixels or 14 megapixel photo. The internal storage, you get 20 gigabytes in the drone itself, but also you can add a micro SD card so that you don't run out of space. Now on the vision goggles, you have a field of view of about 90 degrees, and the internal storage is about 30 gigabytes on goggles themselves. Now battery life, you get 2.5 hours, and the internal display resolution is 2560 by 2560. Now the grip motion controller only weighs 124 grams, and the operating time on the grip is 4 hours. Perfect landing right on the landing pad, which is actually important because the camera's on the bottom. This video is sponsored by Antigravity. So when this drone was announced, I got access to it for a few days, and I went out to Utah, I created some content with it, but it very much was a prototype style drone. It wasn't shooting at full resolution, and I really didn't have access to any of the menus. I could get it up in the air, I could fly it around, and I could hit record. Now, this version has full capabilities, and you're gonna see in this video that there's actually a lot of features that were unlocked as they've been developing this drone over the last few months. So the Antigravity drone is the world's first 360 drone. There's a camera on top and bottom, they stitch it together, and it gives you that full 360 view, and it basically creates an invisible drone. So you don't see this drone when you're flying. You get this awesome view where you can move the camera around in any direction. And so basically when you're flying this drone, you're filming for the flight path, but when you get into the editing software, you're able to go through and reframe your shots and really play around with the footage and have more capabilities than just getting the footage that's just straight out in front of the drone. Now this kit is basically everything that you need to operate with this drone. You have the drone, camera on either side. You've got these little batteries that makes it 249 grams. It's got these two little legs that pop out, so when it lands on the ground, it's not gonna damage the bottom camera. You've got a little case that it comes with that protects the cameras. There's a 3 battery charger. I actually have 4 batteries, which has been super useful. You have a lanyard with a battery attached to it. This connects to your goggles, which give you that POV immersive flight experience. And then you have this grip, and the grip is how you control the drone. And there's actually 2 different ways that you can control this drone, and I'm going to show you the difference when we get into the menus and I actually show you what it's like to fly with this drone. But first, let's actually just turn this on because I want to show you all of the new features that we have access to and the kind of stuff that we didn't know about until this new version of the drone was available. And here we are. We are in the 360 view. You can see I'm scrolling around on the grip and you could see all of my office. And so let me pull up the menu so we could really see what's in this drone. Now, there's a bunch of stuff on this menu that we're going to go through in this video, but I just want to briefly show you kind of this whole layout and what it's like. So there's a return to home button. It automatically comes back home. You have a deep track, so you can actually track objects and people. There's a Sky Genie, which allows you to create some automations with your drone and be able to fly in different paths like orbits or fly out and away, those kind of things. Or there's SkyPath, which is where you create a series of keyframes in the sky, and then the drone will follow those exact keyframes. And you could save them and you can follow them again multiple times over and over. Now up here, you actually have two modes. Free motion mode is what came out on the prototype, but on this drone, we also now have FPV mode. And I'll show you how the difference when you're flying that when we take it up into the mountains. Now, what's pretty cool is there's this see-through feature. You can actually tap on the side of the headset here, but when you do that, I get a view through the headset. So now I have this super wide lens and I can see what's going on here so that I have a view straight out in front. And at any point I can go back and I'm back in this menu system. Now, in terms of the camera parameters, you have standard video, you have slow motion time lapse, you have photo, HDR, burst, interval, AEB, and you could also do auto or pro mode. So in pro mode, you could set up all of your settings. You could set your white balance, your EV, your ISO, or your shutter, and manually control any of them. Now, if we go to our settings and we go to our advanced menu, you could see that there is more options here for these different ways of shooting. You could set your high bit rate. You could do raw photos. You could go through, change your image adjustments. You can have contrast, saturation, sharpness adjustment. You can add things like overexposure warning. You can add guidelines. And so just as you'd expect from a drone, there are a lot of things that you have control over to get the best footage and photos when you're out flying. Now, if we go back to our camera parameters and we go to resolution and frame rate, you can see we could shoot at 8K up to 30 frames per second. We could also shoot 5.7K up to 60 frames per second or 4K up to 100 frames per second. So you have some different options there if you do want those slow motion capabilities. Now, all the footage you're going to see in this video was shot at 8K 30 frames per second. And sometimes I was shooting auto and sometimes I was shooting in the pro mode. Now, beyond just this quick overview, here's the gallery. So this is everything that I was shot with this drone recently. I took it up to the Eastern Sierras and we went and explored some different places with our overland trucks. And we were also out in the desert. So I met up with a couple buddies and we went and found some cool places to fly this drone. And I'm just in the playback from the drone itself. And I can go in here, click any one of these, and I can experience the flight and just look at the footage that I captured when I was out flying. Now, I just want to chime in here real quick. One thing I noticed with this goggle footage that we're playing back, it feels a little bit more choppy than the actual experience when you're in the goggles. It's probably just because of the recording of like the whole thing. So when you're actually in the goggles, it's much more fluid, it's much more immersive. So don't get distracted if you do see a little bit of choppy footage here and there when we're watching this playback from the goggles. So I can play this back and actually look around the 360 space and be able to watch all the footage and not have to be locked in one direction. So my buddy Levi was getting ready to drive around on his electric motorcycle. And so, we could see the footage that I was capturing when I was out there, but also we can look around and see what else was going on. So while you're out in the field, when you're actually shooting, at any point, you can watch back your footage and be able to look around and see if you got, the right shots that you need. Or if you just want to experience the flight, I could hand this headset to someone else and give them the opportunity to actually experience what we just did and be able to look around in the 360 environment. So you can actually give that feeling of flight to someone else and they don't have to do anything with the controller. They just look around with their head. And because this was already recorded, they get to just experience it and look around and see the place. This is such a cool feature because I can hand the headset over to my kids or, one of my friends or something like that who doesn't have good experience flying these drones, but wants to still have that experience of what it's like to fly in these cool locations. That's one thing that makes this drone so different than any other drone that's out there is you really get that immersive quality where you're up experiencing the flight and you're just in the space. It's so cool and it's hard to describe because I was out flying in these different locations and we got some cool footage as I've showed you in this video so far. But while we were flying, I'm able to actually just explore and look around and be in these places from a different perspective. And it's so different than other drones that I've worked with. But instead of just talking about how this works, let's take this outside. Let me show you how you actually use things like the Sky Genie and the tracking and how it works and what the footage looks like when we take it through the editing software after. So I'll see you out in the mountains. All right, so here's the view that I'm seeing right now, like the beautiful mountain landscape. Now, on the controller, if I click the button up here, this is going to bring up the menu. And you have a pointer, so you just point the grip where you want your selection to go and you can select something. Now, when you're flying, you could do these cool 360 shots. So I'm going to fly towards these trees and these mountains. And you can see how I'm rotating the camera around in my editing software, either in the app or in the software on the computer. And you could get these more dynamic shots. Whereas in the goggles, this is what I'm seeing. I'm just flying straight towards these mountains. But in the edit, I can roll this around. I can go look at the trees. I can look back at the mountains, look at the sun. And if I wanted to ever switch it on the controller, either I spin around or on the controller, I use the dial and it spins me back. And it shows the home point out here in the distance. So at any point, you can see where your home is. Now, I'm just going to point the controller down. We're going to fly through these trees back. And you can see how the exposure just fluctuated there. This might be a situation where we want to lock exposure. So if we go back to these trees, let's actually pull up our menu. Let's go to our camera parameters, make it Pro, and we're going to set these both to manual. So it locks the exposure. And let's find a good exposure. I think that looks good. And now let's do that same move. I'm going to fly through these trees, but now it's not going to fluctuate the exposure, which is going to look much better in this setting. So you're going to have to play around with your exposure when you're working with this drone. You know, I fly auto most situations, but if you're doing things like flying through a scene where it's a little bit darker, it's going to automatically expose brighter and it's not going to look as good. So we're flying back through these trees and you can see like the obstacle avoidance popping up saying that we're getting close to objects, but you know, it's 7 meters away kind of thing. The ground is 9 meters away, 8, etc. So as you're flying, you're going to be getting these indications that tell you what's going on with the drone. But let's fly back towards us. Now with the camera settings, this looks good. But we could also just go back to auto, and it's going to give us an auto exposure based on what's going on with the sun, what's going on with the mountains. And we're just going to keep on auto for the rest of this section. Let's go to Sky Genie. Now you have these different moves. You have an orbit, you have an anti-gravity line, a flyaway, an ascend, and a spiral ascent. You also have an oval orbit and an arc shot. So let's just show you each one of these because I have a big open space here. So we're going to click orbit, and then on the controller, you're going to draw a box. I'm going to press C1 again. And now it's going to start the orbit around that object. So it's going to keep it centered and fly in a circle around. All right, now we're going to try the anti-gravity line. So I'm going to grab my Jeep here, tap C1, and it's going to fly towards that object. Drone's going to look down and then spin around the other way. And then when it's done, it's going to fly back to the starting spot. Let's do a flyaway. Tap C1 to start. And it's going to fly out and away. And then again, it's going to fly back to where it started. So with all of these moves, whenever you do one of these Sky Genie moves, it's going to automatically go back to where it always started. Let's do an ascend. And it's going to just ascend on that spot, straight up into the sky, just shooting way up there. And the cool thing is, I'm playing this one back. We're filming in 360, so that was what we saw, but you could also like look around at any time. So with all of these, you could go through and adjust everything later. All right, let's try the spiral ascent. So let's grab the Jeep again, and let's press C1. And now it's going to not only spiral around, but it's going to raise up into the sky. We got a few more oval orbit. Let's see what this one does. So you can see the little box that's right below oval orbit in process. And this one kind of flies up and away, and then it's going to come back down to where it started. So yeah, where it says oval in progress, underneath that's a little box that shows you the direction that the drone is flying. So you always could see that front view of where the drone's going. So it's coming near the Jeep, kind of spinning around it a little bit, and then flying backwards. So the Sky Genie gives you like this ability to have these more complex drone movements that are much harder to get with this grip controller, but it just gives you options and flexibility, ways to fly around different objects, which is pretty cool. Now, one huge thing on the A1 that wasn't on the prototype, these lenses are replaceable. So if you do end up scratching the lens, say you accidentally hit a tree or you land and you hit a rock on the bottom lens or something like that, you scratch it up. Well, you don't really have to worry because you can replace these lenses yourself. You get a little kit from Antigravity. It doesn't cost very much. And then you're able to go through and change out the lenses and put fresh ones on so that you can keep flying and not have to have any issues with scratches on your lens. So let me show you how tracking works on this drone. So there's this deep track feature, and it's kind of the same way as the Sky Genie. So you're going to press that C1 button and track. I'm going to track Jake here. It shows that it's a person. And then as he moves, it's just going to follow him. So right now it's from behind. So if I press and hold C1, I can choose the direction. I'm going to go to the front. So now it's going to swing around to the front while keeping that track going. And anytime I can move my camera around and see what's going on, but he's just going to keep walking and it's swinging back to the front. That's pretty cool. I'm going to hold the C1 and I want to go to the right. So it's going to find the right side of him and keep tracking him. And then follow him as he moves. So it's just going to keep going in his direction. And I could do things like raise the drone up into the sky as he's doing this, and it's still tracking him. Now let's go from the left side. So it's going to continue to track. It's going to swing around, still following him. And it's going to be moving to his left side. So it's pretty intuitive to use. You just pick which angle that you want to track from, and it will continue tracking wherever Jake goes. And so you could use the controller and you could pull on the grip and it will go closer to the subject if you're too far away. But I'm going to do this behind the back shot. So it's kind of this third person walk, and it's just going to follow him from behind as it tracks him. I mean, this is so cool because you don't really have to think about it. And then in the editing software, you could go through and reframe, but you're always tracking your subject. So it just opens up a lot of cool flexibility to be able to use this drone and track different objects in your frame. Now with this drone, definitely when you're landing it, you want to make sure you have a clean place. I have this landing pad, this anti-gravity landing pad that I've been using. It actually makes it really easy to land this drone so that you don't get dust and you don't scratch up that bottom lens, because that's like the biggest thing with this drone is you don't want to scratch up either lens. You can replace them obviously, but you still don't want to scratch them. You want to keep them clean as long as possible. So I've been using this landing pad, and with it, when you're controlling the gimbal down, you kind of just point towards that and you find the landing pad, and then the little circle pops up that shows you where to land, and you just press and hold and it will drop down to the landing pad. So when you do the return to home, it will automatically do this, but you can also guide it with your controller in, and just the landing pad makes it so much easier to be able to like find that spot on the ground and bring it down. All right, let's talk about this headset, because with the headset, you have, this battery that's on a lanyard, which actually is kind of nice because it takes some of the weight off of your head. These goggles are only 340 grams. So when you're wearing the goggles, it really doesn't feel like much on the front of your face. And inside, you get this cushion ring, and you have like these little rubber sleeves on the bottom, and it basically blocks out all the light. So when you're in the world of this drone, when you're in the goggles, it's completely immersive. Like you have no light spilling in. It feels comfortable on your face, and you really kind of get absorbed in the flight experience. And having like a good pair of goggles that's not distracting is very important when you are flying a drone in this way. All right, let's talk about like some different ways that you fly this drone. Now that I've worked with it a few times, like I had it, the pre-release prototype version, this one I've been flying for the last few days, like I'm really starting to get a sense of how to fly this drone because it's so different. There's two main ways to fly. So if we look in the menu, you have this free motion or you have this FPV mode. So you can fly this like a typical FPV style drone. And I've tried that a few ways. It's pretty fun. But how you fly the free motion is a little bit different. That's the kind of new way. Let's get this drone in the air. And it's interesting. So in this free motion mode, basically where you position the grip controller, you're going to see this like circle on screen. And you can see it dancing around as I move my wrist around. What I found is you really want to like use your body to move this drone. So you kind of become the drone itself, like you're engaging with it. And I find myself when I'm working with it, I'm like doing this kind of stuff and like moving around in weird ways because I'm like trying to get the drone to do that. And if you use your body, it feels more natural than just trying to make your wrist do these movements. So let's say I want to go towards these mountains. I'm just pulling the trigger, moving straight. But let's say I want to turn. I just rotate my body and I can turn. And then I can turn the other way around this tree. And so you're kind of doing these motions where you're moving your body and it moves the controller at the same time. And it makes it easier to fly this drone. Now, if I want to go up, I pull my wrist up, go up into the sky. If I want to go down, I pull my wrist down, point it at the ground. And if I want to start doing some more interesting movements, like flying through these trees, I'll twist with the drone and it feels natural to me. So like if I want to turn back this way, I can literally move my whole body around and like fly through these trees. And it feels just super natural. Like it feels like you're flying. I mean, this drone really does give you that sense that you are up there flying. Now I'm going to pause. I can hit the brake button at any time. Where are you? Oh, you're over here. So like if you find a cool space to fly around, you can really like just move your body. Now on the controller, you have the dial. And when you spin the dial, it spins your view in the goggles. So if you don't want to be moving around like I just was, and you just want to be like sitting in a chair, well, you could use this dial. Spins that field of view, whatever direction that you want to look. The issue is when you're pulling the grip and you're moving, you can't spin this dial. It's not going to move the drone. You have to take your finger off the grip and then you can spin around. So it's kind of like reorient yourself and then start flying. And then stop flying, reorient yourself, start flying again. So it's not as natural, especially if you want to do these bigger sweeping movements where you're coming like up and through trees. Like if I'm moving my body and I'm spinning through these trees, it's much more natural. And I could actually fly through a cool space like this. Now, at any point, if you want to bring the drone back home, you could just go into the menu setting and hit return to home. And the drone's going to fly up to the height that you had set for it. It's going to find this green line and it's just going to start coming back to home. At any point, you could hit the stop button. It's going to brake and it's going to stop just midair. Now, there's this other cool feature, Sky Path. And so it just shows you right here on the screen, you can create a route. So you tap C1 to add a waypoint and you tap C2 to delete it. So we're going to create a route. We're going to start here. We're going to tap C1. It's going to give us our first spot. And let's say I want to fly over here. Tap C1 again. And then I want to fly over here. Tap C1 again. And you can see on screen, it's giving us our route. So it's showing what the route's going to take when it flies in this path. So now I'm going to come back over here. Now let's go up in the sky. Let's tap C1 again. And now we have this path that goes around that tree and up into the sky. So I'm going to press and hold C1 to finish. And you could go through and change this. You could change the speed and the smoothness. So let's make this smooth. Let's make this really smooth. Let's keep that speed and let's save and start. And so it's going to fly to that initial start point and it's going to start this whole route. And I can look around while this is going. So you could set up a cool path and it's going to be following this path. And as it's going, I can look around. So I could see like what's going on in these trees over here, what's going on in those trees, looking at the mountains. Like you really get the sense that you're flying. And I added that smoothness, so it's slowly moving past these trees. And it's going to slowly arc into the sky. So it's going to be a nice gradual movement, which is going to be perfect for being able to edit this footage later with that 360 ability. And you fly up into the sky. And then the final shot could be something like showing the mountains all the way down to the valley. And it's done. So you could save that route, or you could go through and delete it. You just have these waypoints that you could use again and again if you want to. And what's cool is once you have these waypoints set, you can put the goggles on someone else and they can just experience the flight without actually having to use the controller. So I could put the goggles on my kids and they can look around while the drone is autonomously flying through the path that I set using these waypoints. All right, let me show you this FPV mode. So this is a little bit different. So this is like a standard FPV style drone. So you could still look around, but the grip doesn't move as quickly. So you can see the circle on the screen. Like I move this grip around, it's gonna keep the drone completely forward, always center facing. So you have to physically move the drone to the left or to the right to actually do the motion. Whereas when you're working with the drone in free motion mode, the drone doesn't have to be pointed in the straight motion. It's wherever you point the dot. So I could like spin over here and do the dot real quick and the drone's gonna take off. So like in the difference is in the FPV mode, the drone is always staying in the same direction and you're flying it like an airplane. That's the easiest way to think about it. So as I fly this, it's gonna be similar to an FPV drone, but you still have that ability to look around in 360. So let's turn on recording. And so if you want to fly it in like the normal FPV way, that option's here. It's just going to limit your ability to kind of do the bigger motions where you want to spin around and fly in a different direction fast. I actually prefer the free motion mode on this drone, and I found that I really enjoy flying it with the free motion. However, if you're used to flying an FPV style drone, then this option gives you that ability to fly this drone as an FPV drone, and it will feel, very much the same. You just have that ability to look around in the goggles in 360 and they're not locked straight ahead. Let's go back to free motion mode. Now I can spin the drone and fly in any direction, and you don't have to worry about which way the drone is facing. It makes it a lot easier to do these big motions, especially with this 360. It actually does make a lot of sense, and I do like flying in this free motion way. At first, I didn't like it. I thought it was weird, but now I really understand it, and it's a lot of fun to fly. Now, one thing I haven't shown you yet is the case that comes with the Antigravity A1. So everything can fit in here. It's a little side pack, and even if you get the landing pad, that just fits right in the back. And this landing pad has become super useful, especially when we're out like in the desert and stuff, just to protect that bottom lens. However, let's talk about the editing software. So Antigravity has specific editing software to reframe this 360 footage. There's an app, but there's also desktop software. And I'm just going to run through some of the features that really make it easy to work with this footage. So when you're pulling the footage onto your phone or on the computer, you can go through reframe and be able to either export that, use it in your video, or bring it into your editing software like I'm doing for making this video. I'll export these video files out, bring them into Final Cut Pro, and then work with them there with all the other footage that I have. So this is the desktop version of the Antigravity software. And you can see over here on the left, here's all the footage. And I could go through and I could watch back any of these clips. So I could click on one of these and I could see the full 360 view by pushing this little icon. I can go up here and I can go to the edit, and I just use my mouse to drag around and find the angle. Now, when you're working with this footage, it's all about adding keyframes. So let's say I want to start here. I'll let the footage play for a little bit. I want to go down to where the truck is, hit another keyframe, and I'm just using the right click on my mouse. You could also click this button right here to add a keyframe as well. So let's keep going. Let's say I want to come back, look backwards now at the trucks, add another keyframe. And let's go back to this first one. Let's say I want to change the width of each one of these lenses. So I can click on this keyframe and you can see I could go crystal ball, I could go tiny planet, mega view, ultra wide, de-warp, which makes it look more like a standard camera. And you also have all these different views now. So you have a front view, you have a back view, you have a port view, you have a starboard view, and then you have an overhead view. So you could go through and change the direction based on the way the drone was facing. Now for this one, I want to have this view, so I'm just going to drag to a custom view here, make it dewarp. When I go right overhead, I want to actually zoom out. Let's zoom out to a tiny planet. So I'm going to click that tiny planet, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's not full tiny planet. And you could just zoom in using your mouse. So I'm zooming in and out to be able to change the width of the lens. And then when we go to that third one looking backwards, we could go to the mega view. So it's super wide. And then from here, let's add another keyframe. So I slowly stop. So I'm going to move it up, add another keyframe. But on this keyframe, let's rotate. So you could change the angle of the horizon. So now when we play this back, you have some crazy motion going on. Camera spins around, goes out to that tiny planet, zooms back into that wide view, and then twists up and away out to the sky. Now, the original shot was just the drone flying in a straight line, but this shows you the power of what you can do with this editing when you're either working on your phone or you're working on the desktop software. They both are going to be able to have the same capabilities. Now, let's pull up another shot here, one of the ones that we did the Sky Genie on. So here's the shot where we spun around our Jeeps. We did the orbit kind of motion, the circle around. Now, when we go into the edit, you could either freely change this. We could click this button here, go to free view, and then we could look around and change up the shot. So let's say on this shot, when we're spinning around the truck, I start on the truck and I pan out to the mountains, and then I pan back to the truck as it does this orbit. So now when we play this back, you kind of see this motion where it goes out to the mountains and then it goes back to the trucks. That's pretty cool, but let's clear these keyframes and let's go to the start of this shot. And now I'm going to go up here to this button that's called Pilot View. And we click this, it's now going to automatically position the drone how the pilot was seeing the action. So this is going to follow whatever direction that the drone was flying when you were out flying. Now, when you pair this with the Sky Genie, this is where you're able to get the super clean motion. So now when I play back, it's a perfect orbit around my Jeep. So you get this perfect circle around, and you don't have to do any editing because it's using that pilot view, which is taking from what was shot when we were out there in the mountain. And we were doing the circle around the Jeep, so it's keeping that view perfect. So whenever you do something like the Sky Genie moves and you put it in pilot view, you're always going to have a perfect shot. Now also up here, you could change your color. You could do color plus, you could add clarity, you could do exposure, highlight, shadows, contrast, all of these different features. So you have the ability to control the image and make it look pretty good just right here in this software. Now, what about tracking? Because we did some tracking shots. Let's pull up one of the shots where I was tracking my buddy Jake. So I have this shot here where Jake's walking through the desert. Now the shot is tracking him with the drone, but if we want to keep him centered the entire time, like we're trying to use this to follow the action of what Jake was doing, well, then I could use this deep track function. Highlight Jake, and then just start tracking. It's going to go through and track all this footage and just make a strong focus on Jake. Now, once we have it tracked, I can actually change the view of the lens. So it's always going to be locked onto Jake here, but I could go to dewarp, I could go to mega, I could go to tiny planet, we could do crystal ball, we could do any of these different modes. I could even zoom in a little bit more. Say I wanted to have it a little bit tighter on him. We see that he's fully tracked in this shot. We're able to hold that closer view. I could also do something like the mega view and have it super wide. And so we could see this much wider shot of the whole area that he's at. But pairing the tracking when we're out shooting mixed with the intelligent tracking in the Antigravity software, you get some really cool shots that really focus on your subject, really keep them locked on. Now, there's a lot of power in this editing software to be able to reframe your shot, really play around with it, and you'll be able to have the same type of functionality whether you're using the phone or you're using the desktop software like I am here. Overall, I think Antigravity really knocked it out of the park for their first gen drone. Like, this is the first drone they've ever created for this new company, and it works well. Like, the whole experience works. Everything that you try to do in the application, in the software, and the goggles, it all just works. Like, if you want to do these Sky Genie shots, you want to do the tracking, like, you can do all of these movements. Or if you just want to fly around in FPV mode or that free motion mode, you can get the drone up, you're able to experience the flight, and you get some really interesting footage that you just don't get with other drones. It's going to be really interesting to see what kind of footage that all of you are able to capture using this drone, because it is just such a new experience. And I think it's going to open the doors to just different styles of drone flying and different ways to use a drone that we haven't really thought about until 360 drones were so easily accessible. In the past, there's been ways to make 360 drones by putting cameras on it, but this is really something different. It's an invisible floating camera. It's the coolest way to think about it. You could just put a camera anywhere in the sky and be able to look in any direction. So I'd love to know your thoughts around the Antigravity A1. And if you have any questions about this drone, please let me know. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to be doing more videos with Antigravity. I'm going to be working with this drone because, I've only had this for a few weeks, but this is going to be a drone that I'm going to play around with to be able to get these unique styles of 360 shots that you couldn't get before. And next, I highly suggest you check out this video right here. It's a whole story around what happened when I took this drone out into nature and really played around with it in some interesting environments. And it shows how you could use this drone in an outdoor adventure style setting. So I'll see you over there.